Oh boy, Shakur Stevenson has a hell of a performance, and I was very impressed. I've never seen Shakur fight like that. If Shakur continues to fight like that, let me tell you right now, he's my favorite fighter. That version of Shakur Stevenson beats everybody at 135, and man, he took a lot of shots, but he looked really good offensively. I've obviously been asking, and time again, I've been saying Shakur is one of the best defensive fighters of all time, but can we really trust his hands? That was the big question for me, and he answered a lot of questions, in my opinion, with that performance against William Zepeda. And shout out to Zepeda. I know, me personally, I thought it was a close fight. The first half was really close, razor thin in my opinion, and then I saw Shakur start to pull away, and he just outthought and outworked Zepeda in my opinion. Zepeda was throwing a lot of shots, definitely worked hard, but you could visibly see that Shakur knew what Zepeda was going to have in the second, half of the fight, and Zepeda basically gave everything he had and was most creative in the beginning, in the first half of the fight, but then you kind of slowly saw him start to fade, and you saw Shakur just take over and dominate and do what he does best, which is hit and not get hit, keep that fight in the center of the ring. In the beginning, I was really shocked. I honestly didn't like it in the beginning. In the beginning of the fight, I was like, oh, I don't like this for Shakur, because he got popped with that right hand from Zepeda, that kind of power jab that he threw while Shakur was against the ropes. That was the first time that we've ever seen Shakur really stunned like that. Maybe off balance, a little bit buzzed, but recovered well. Like every great fighter, Floyd Mayweather had his moments against Maidana, had his moments against Mosley where he got cracked, and I think that was Shakur's moment where he got cracked by Zepeda with the right hand, but he recovered. That was really the only big shot that Zepeda was able to land. He landed some clean shots, but nothing as consequential as that one shot he landed on Shakur against the ropes. But Shakur's sharp, bro. I don't know what else to say. He looked really sharp. He definitely shut up a lot of doubters, that call him a runner, that call him a track star. I think that, even though Turkey didn't actually do anything like make the ring smaller or create some kind of no running rule, I think all the talk about it definitely lit a fire in Shakur Stevenson, and that showed in the fight. He said, oh, you want to see me sit down and sit in the pocket a little bit, exchange and let my hands go, and he whooped Zepeda's ass at the second half of the fight. And Zepeda did well in the first half. Just like I said before, but you could see there's levels. You could see that stylistically, you see this Mexican fighter, that Mexican style is overwhelming, a lot of high pressure, high volume, which is very exciting to watch. Makes for a very entertaining and difficult fight for Shakur. But then you saw that style that, with a hit and not get hit, the slickness of Shakur, and he let his hands go. He looked really good when he let his hands go. And, like I said, if Shakur continues to fight like that, that way that he did against Zepeda, that's my favorite fighter all of a sudden. But like Shakur said, he doesn't plan to do that, all the time, or, he plans to get hit way less than he did in the Zepeda fight, because, like Terrence Crawford even said, Shakur kind of stayed on the ropes a little bit too long for his liking, and I would agree, but I think Shakur kind of knew he could sit in there and take some shots, and he showed that he's a dog, at the end of the day. That's what I wanted to see. I just questioned, whenever they talked about Tank after that Lamont Roach fight, everyone was saying, oh, Shakur definitely beats him now. But then I was questioning, I was like, yeah, but is Shakur willing to sit in that pocket? And we got our answer when he fought William Zepeda. I mean, he sat right in the pocket, didn't really move out, didn't use any angles, sat in that pocket, used his reflexes, and that was good enough to outclass Zepeda. So Shakur's sharper than I thought, he's greater than I thought, and, really surprised me. I give him an A+ performance for that one. I think that's the best performance I've seen from a I don't want to say up and coming, but one of those guys who everyone's saying he's not proven yet, that he has accomplished some stuff on his resume but doesn't have the best resume in the world, hasn't proven that he's a dog. I think that was the fight. That was the fight that showed us who Shakur really is. And when things get nasty, I was curious to see what was going to happen, and Shakur showed that. He got cut, he was bleeding from the mouth, had a little bit of bruising on his face, but it didn't bother him. He dealt with some adversity, and he passed the test with flying colors. Beating a guy like Zepeda, it's not an easy thing to do, but Shakur made it look easy in that second half of the fight. Definitely was a very close fight nonetheless in the beginning, but like I said, Shakur tends to get better as the fight goes on, and once he stopped getting his back on the ropes for long periods of time and kept that fight in the center of the ring, that dude was sharp and untouchable. So Shakur, that version of Shakur, I don't know if Tank can beat that version, because he showed that he's got layers now. It's not only the defense, he can let his hands go throw, and he knows when to do it. Everything that Zepeda had, Shakur was ready for in that fight, and he made the adjustments to make sure that, you know, when Zepeda was on the offensive, Shakur was on the defensive. And when Zepeda was getting tired, that's when Shakur would let his hands go and stick in that pocket and, you know, spend time in there in exchange, because he knew that Zepeda wasn't going to have the skill to really land anything crazy, at least in the second half of the fight. So much credit to Shakur Stevenson. Just wanted to give my thoughts. I was very happy with that fight. Probably performance of the year, in my opinion, considering how good Shakur is and the magnitude of that fight. You know, everybody doubting Shakur, saying that he's weak, might have hurt hands. So shout out to Shakur Stevenson. But thank you guys for watching. Let me know down below what you guys think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.